Elizabeth Audencream.
This One's Wife, Hacking Hypocrite Harry. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. David Brown tells us in the Times, Prince Harry wins Mirror Group phone hacking claim at High Court. Duke of Sussex awarded £140,600 in damages after judge rules 15 out of 33 stories in case were gathered unlawfully. It's not a resounding victory because he did not succeed in all of the claims that he brought forward. Nevertheless, that isn't really going to concern Harry. He'll focus on the ones where he succeeded. The money that the Mirror has been ordered to pay is but a drop in the ocean with regard to its profits, and ultimately it'll have got off lightly. You're an idiot if you go into litigation thinking that you're going to make money out of it, but invariably, with the irrecoverable cost element, the cost of PR, the cost of shuttling back and forth across the Atlantic, Harry will probably end up out of pocket. But more about the ramifications of this vis-a-vis This One's Wife. Let's learn more about what went on. The Duke of Sussex vowed on Friday to continue his mission against the media after a High Court judge ruled that he had been the victim of phone hacking by the publisher of the Daily Mirror. Harry was awarded £140,600 compensation from Mirror Group newspapers, MGN, after the judge found he was the victim of voicemail hacking to a modest extent and unlawful information gathering by private detectives. This outcome, of course, is something that very much depends on your own perspective. There'll be some people that will seize upon modest extent, so it wasn't the wholesale hacking that he suggested that it was. Others will say the fact that it happened at all is outrageous. There was extensive phone hacking by MGN from 2006 to 2011, even to some extent during the Leveson inquiry into media standards, Mr. Justice Fancourt ruled. Piers Morgan, a former Daily Mirror editor, later criticised the Duke for his own ruthless, greedy, hypocritical enthusiasm for intruding into the royal family's privacy. More about Piers in due course. Harry was the first member of the royal family to give evidence in court for 130 years. During 8 years of questioning in June, he described how reports left him paranoid and led to him ending friendships with those he wrongly suspected of leaking information. The articles, published in the Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, included details of his relationships with former girlfriends Chelsea Davy and Caroline Flack, his cocaine use, wearing of a swastika to a party, and his military service. The judge found that 15 of the 33 articles complained about by Harry were the result of unlawful information gathering. The Duke was seeking at least £440,000 in damages. Sly Bailey, who was then chief executive of Trinity Mirror, and Paul Vickers, its legal director, knew of hacking before 2011, Fancourt said in a 386-page judgment. He found Bailey turned a blind eye to it from the end of 2006. The judge said 11 private investigators were used very substantially by MGN journalists and executives for unlawful information gathering. A further 13 did a significant amount of work, and 5 did some. A judge described Omid Scobie, a journalist who has written 2 books about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, as a reliable witness. Well, okay. He accepted Scobie's account of being on work experience at the Daily Mirror when he overheard Morgan being told that a story involving the singer Kylie Minogue came from voicemails. Harry was not in court, but described the judgment in a statement as a great day for truth as well as accountability. He called for the police, the financial regulator, and stock market to investigate unlawful information gathering. The court has found that Mirror Group's principal, board directors, their legal department, senior executives, and editors such as Piers Morgan clearly knew about or were involved in these illegal activities, he said. Between them, they even went as far as lying under oath to Parliament during the Leveson inquiry, to the stock exchange, and to us all ever since. Today's ruling is vindicating and affirming. I've been told that slaying dragons will get you burned, but in light of today's victory and the importance of doing what is needed for a free and honest press, it is a worthwhile price to pay. The mission continues. A Scotland Yard spokesman said, "We will carefully consider the civil judgment handed down today at the High Court. There is no ongoing investigation." It's important as well to emphasise that just because it may have made a founding with regard to unlawful activity, this is a civil court, and the standard of proof is the balance of probabilities. Namely, it only has to get to 51%. Namely, was it more likely than not that the events claimed or complained of occurred? For there to be a criminal conviction, it has to be beyond reasonable doubt, which is a much higher threshold with regard to the standard of proof. Accordingly, Harry might well succeed with some of his claims here, but that doesn't mean that a successful criminal prosecution would come out of them. Some of the claims relate to the period when Piers Morgan was editor of the Daily Mirror between 1995 and 2004. Morgan, who was not a witness at the trial, has denied wrongdoing and is a presenter for Talk TV, owned by News UK, the parent company of The Times. I'll be addressing Piers Morgan separately. But what does this tell us? Well, Harry has succeeded with part of the claims, not all of the claims. And remember, this wasn't about whether this was true or not, but whether the information had been unlawfully obtained. And in 15 instances, the judge found that it had and awarded him damages appropriately. But of course, all this does is actually demonstrate the hypocrisy of Harry. He has embarked upon this moral crusade. Notably, he hadn't done so years ago, and it's clear that the influence of his wife is behind this, as she, driven by her own paranoia, has seized upon his own to suggest that he ought to take action against the media. Remember, he said that he was doing it to protect his wife, and therefore that is indicative of his own emotional empathy for his wife, wanting to protect her, but also the fact that this one's wife will have repeatedly claimed about the supposed intrusion of the press and the criticisms, much of it legitimate, and therefore she will have utilised her husband as an instrument to try and get back at the press. The press largely doesn't like this one's wife, but with justification. They haven't said, "Oh, we'll just immediately take against her," although that's the narrative that she's attempted to portray, but rather they've repeatedly seen the way that she has behaved and have commented critically about it, in the same way that many people on social media have also. Those criticisms are repeated threats to her need for control, and therefore she is not in a position to do something necessarily directly, apart from when she issued legal proceedings and succeeded against Associated Newspapers Limited, with a rather bizarre outcome concerning the letter that was disclosed to her father. But aside from that, she's utilising Harry as a proxy to wage war on the media, harnessing his own dislike and distrust of them, capitalising upon the loss of his mother, as he perceives, to the media, and also to say, "Harry, I've been mistreated by them, we need to do something." This segues into all of their work where essentially they seek to censor people, that they are suspected of being behind activities to close certain channels down, to cause certain people to be removed from Twitter, that they are behind certain campaigns which they say is in the name of disinformation, but actually seems more about censorship and control. Accordingly, this one's wife will be delighted by this outcome because it will provide vindication for her view that the press and the media is not to be trusted, although of course she regularly courts it herself. As for Harry, he's been cajoled and encouraged by his wife to undertake this action, and it just demonstrates what a hypocrite he is. On the one hand, he complains about the unlawful disclosure of information relating to himself, and then what has he been doing? Unlawfully disclosing information about his family. He may not have been doing it by way of hacking into their phones, but the fact is that private instances and private conversations have been relayed by Harry for the purposes of money and for settling scores, which is precisely what he is complaining about in relation to the way that the newspaper had behaved, that they had released information about him. Thus, it's okay for Harry to release information contrary to what somebody would want with regard to his own family, but it's not acceptable for a newspaper to disclose this information about him. He stands out as a hypocrite in relation to this, and once again, this is a combination of the fact that he's not particularly bright, and he's been egged on by this one's wife for the reasons that I've already explained. The duo be cock-a-hoop about this outcome, although it's not a huge amount of money, and of course his irrecoverable cost element, alongside the other incidental expenses, is likely to eat up, if not extinguish, the award that he's achieved. The fact that it gives him an opportunity to make grandstanding speeches, and also, of course, the fact that Piers Morgan is implicated in all of this is something that will delight this one's wife as a consequence of the ongoing battle between her and him. Success, partially, for Harry, but all it does is highlight the way that he's controlled by his wife and the vendetta that the two have against the media, which is born out of hypocrisy. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.